have signed up. First, we will hear from Ms. Kayla Linderos.
Mayor, I had sent over some slides. I don't know if we want to go into that amount of detail right now, or if you just want me to chat briefly, or if you have a preference at all.
We do have the slides ready if you want to.
I would hate for you to prepare them and not show them.
Yeah. And I will try to go through these really quickly because I know that you all have a lot of background on the item, but the item is rezoning is item number 8 on the agenda tonight. And so, you know, it's odd for me to speak against a rezoning because many of you know that in my work life, I represent developers. So I do understand the irony of this. But this specific rezoning, I want to point out a couple of issues that are a concern. So this is 123 acres on Highway 93. It is on Highway 93. It's not in an intersection, just a little bit west of the intersection of Hartrick Bluff and Highway 93. And my pictures did not turn out as well as I wanted them to, but I think you all kind of know the location, of course. This is a screenshot from the comp plan that's blurry, but that red circle is generally the area. That's the intersection of Hartrick there, where kind of the pink and yellow and green all intersect. But that's the subject property in the comp plan. It's classified as rural estate, intended for land areas that will continue to be comprised of that rural character. And the comp plan, of course, lists some appropriate uses for that: traditional ag, larger lots, utilities, schools, parks, things of that nature. So that's just a really broad overview of what that rural estates category is in the comp plan. So that's the land at issue. That's what it is currently categorized as in the comp plan, which of course is in the packet as well. So you have to click for me. Sorry. No, you're good. I'm sorry. You know, the staff report mentions that the categories in the comp plan are not absolute and may shift. I do want to bring up Texas Local Government Code Section 211.004 that states that zoning regulations must be adopted in accordance with the comprehensive plan, and of course are designed to meet these goals of less congestion, making sure we've got safe or secure safety, promote general health and welfare, prevent overcrowding, all that laundry list of things that zoning is intended to do. But I do want to point out that that section of the government code does use the word must be adopted in accordance with the comp plan. A couple of things I'll say, you know, the staff report notes that, you know, for these areas that were in the ETJ when the comp plan was done in 2020, that the rural estates category was one that was kind of assigned to those areas in the ETJ. I do want to say I see that, but if you actually look back at the comp plan in that same area, so if you went east on 93 and south of 93, those are all areas, a lot of them still in the ETJ, that were actually given a different category under the comp plan, not rural estates. So that does give an indication that there was some thought given to the areas in the ETJ and what they should be. And those areas were designated more of your residential mixed use type of category. So Kelly, you can put it, sorry. The things I just want to touch on are these 4: street congestion, overcrowding, undue concentration of population, adequate infrastructure. And you can move. I'll go through these next couple of slides really quickly. But if we just focus on the developments that have been approved in the last 4 to 5 years in this same area, focusing on, of course, the red star is the property at issue in this rezoning. And then the other 2 circles are developments that have been rezoned and some that have been platted as well. So you can move to the next. So if you look at the green star, that's Leon Reserve. So that's just down 93 from the proposed rezoning for tonight. But you've got up to 386 lots already approved in that rezoning on about 95 acres. And then south of 93, which you all are aware of, is the future TISD site that includes also a mix of uses, including multifamily and general retail. That is up to 350 dwellings, not including the multifamily. So there could be additional dwellings associated with that. You can go to the next one. And then if you go south on Hardrick Bluff, these are developments that have been in place. Of course, Hardrick Ranch phases 1 and 2. Phase 1 is well underway as far as construction goes. But actually between those two, you've got another potential 500 lots, 250 in that yellow star, and then another 350 in the green. So this is a summary of what the current applicant has proposed for the 123 acres. It is a PD with a mix of uses. If all uses were built out according to what they've requested, it could be up to 1,386 dwellings on 123 acres. So if you'll go to the next slide, all of that to say, between the 5 developments, not this one, between the 5 developments that are already online, you have up to 1,800 dwellings in a very small geographic area. You would be adding, and I would say too, just as comparison, you have 1,800 dwellings on 615 acres. Those 5 developments are about 615 acres combined. Again, this would be up to almost 1,400 dwellings on 123 acres. So the density is very different if we consider what the applicant is proposing for this property on 93. Of course, we know from a road perspective, expansion of Highway 93, there's no funding allocated for it. It's been identified as a potential project, but no funding. And then the expansion of Hardrick Bluff south of Highway 93 in the proposed budget that you all are considering. At the moment, there is an allocation for 30% of design. But realistically, you're probably at least 3 to 4 years out from construction, while at the same time, you've already approved about 1,100 lots south of 93. So next slide, almost done. So all of that to summarize also too, just there's some traffic here. Staff also has a presentation and they'll go through that. And the comparison of what you already have coming online versus what this would bring in. And then I'll just say, staff's going to go through in detail, but the infrastructure is not in place to actually support the density that the applicant has applied for. If I understand correctly, the water in place would only service about 150 single family units and maybe a little bit more multifamily units. And then also as far as entrances go, there would be have to be another entrance off of Hardrick Bluff to get above 300 units. All of that to say, in the comments from the developer at P&Z, they acknowledged those limitations and said, well, density is not really a concern. And I would say, then don't zone to a density that you can't support and wouldn't be able to support for many years. I think I'm almost done. So I do just want to compare. I just happened to be at the June 6th council meeting and you all considered a rezoning at the corner of 31st Street and Canyon Creek. It was a PD MF2, so multifamily on about 12 acres. It would have allowed for about 224 apartment units. And not to pick on Councilmember Long, but I had gone back and listened to her comments and she noted that for District 3 in particular, concerns about traffic congestion and density, of course, in that area. And I would say that if those concerns exist at the corner of 31st and Canyon Creek, which are 2 major arterials that already have utilities in place, then I think those same concerns are heightened on this property without adequate utilities and without roads that are adequate to handle that density as well. I think that's it. So, but I thank you. I'll be at the council meeting as well. I will pare that down so I don't speak as much. They have the timer and it's very.
Divine forces there.
And you do, I know.
I'll run you off.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Bring you out.
Very good. Next we have Scott Yearbeck.
Watch it.
Watch it. Yes, sir.
I'm just a guy here wanting to convey support for the T hangers that are about to be discussed at the feasibility study. We've got a great resource here in town at the Temple Airport. Temple's got a great reputation for having a great FBO, great staff, and cheap gas, which brings a lot of people into the area. We just in Central Texas, there's a huge demand for hangars. I surveyed 7 airports in the area. There's over 1,000 people looking for hangar space between the 7 airports for about 30, 45 minutes a year. So we've got an opportunity. We've got a good study. We got an opportunity here to build up to 92 more hangars. Cooperation with a local developer, and I'm just here to ask that y'all please give this serious consideration and support, because the people that rent those type of airplanes are the people we want coming into town, going into town and spending their money.
Very good. Thank you, sir. All right, moving on. The next item is to discuss if maybe need any regular meeting agenda items for tonight's meeting. So council or staff, anything you want to bring up? Any further discussion? Councilmember, you're okay?
Me? Oh, Kayla threw me under the bus, so I'm fine. It's okay, perfectly okay. I support what Kayla came and presented. I've talked to numerous residents and it seems I don't have anything to say that Kayla didn't say better.
Okay. Staff, anything? No? Next is to receive a presentation from Michael Hodges of Aviation Business Solutions on the result of the T-hanger box hanger market study that was completed for the Drawn Miller Central Texas Regional Airport.
Good
Charlie.
afternoon, Mayor, Council, Bryn. The city this past year hired Aviation Business Solutions once again. For those of you that have been on the board for a while, recognize this company. We hired them to do the FBO market study and operational study for us. We were very pleased with the work that they did for us. So we've hired them back to address this situation. I know constituents press you guys for the city to build more T hangars or other hangars of sort. And so we wanted them to come in and tell us what it would cost these days for us to do this. Some of the options that we have, whether it's the city doing it by ourselves, a private partnership with the city, or a private entity doing it themselves, things like that. So Michael Hodges is here and he's going to give the presentation of their findings. Michael?
Thanks, John. Nice to be back here and
Going to the front.
sure.
Like that just kind of helps everybody see a little bit.
Thanks, Mayor. I told him this.
Oh, no. I'm sorry.
So, now I'm going to have to look back. So a little bit.
Yeah, I know.
No, it is nice to be back. We've enjoyed everything we've been able to do at the airport out here. It's a great airport. A lot of opportunities, certainly activity in the general area, which I'll talk a little bit about. But just to kind of start out, these were kind of the goals that we were given as far as this particular study, which is, relative to the airport itself, is that, basically doing everything necessary to meet the needs of the users of the airport, to better understand the hangar marketplace. I mean, there's a lot of things that Sean and his team can do as far as contacting airports, but a lot of times one of the benefits of a consultant is we're able to get some information that might not be readily available to you. So that's kind of the thing that we were focused on, getting, comparable rents in the region and trying to get a little better understanding about kind of the backgrounds of those rates and how they got to where they are, how they may, some of the dynamics that may be specific to a particular airport that may weigh on what your rates would be at your airport. Address the financial implications of doing this, both from the airport doing it themselves or the city doing it themselves versus, as Sean mentioned, a third-party developer, and some of the pros and cons of that, which I'll go into. And then obviously, the whole overview of this is for you to be good stewards of of the airport and the community and everything that the airport provides to the community. Some of the more relevant findings that we found that I think are very important to the overall study, which is, obviously the regional economy is growing. All of the airports in the region are benefiting from that. We focused on probably 7 or 8 airports that were really kind of key competing airports in the region, but the 3 that are kind of the most relevant would be Georgetown Executive, Austin Executive, and Waco Regional. So there was a lot of emphasis on those airports because of the proximity and really kind of the competitive environment at those airports. One of the things that is, I think, most important to note that we found is that nearly every airport in the region was reflecting 100% occupancy with a waiting list. Now, I will caution you that waiting lists do not always tell a full story, especially in an area like this where there's a lot of airports in a fairly small area. Because what's often you find is that people will put their name on every airport's waiting list, especially if there's no cost to get on there. And so you don't always have a real good feel about what the demand really is. The other thing that's important to understand that we've kind of learned over the years is that everybody wants a hangar until they find out what it costs. And so we'll get into that a little bit later as well, but we tried to keep that in mind as well relative to the waiting list at some of these airports as far as what their current market rates are and what the real demand might be. That's really what we try to focus on, is what the real demand is, not just taking numbers at face value. Obviously, one of the things that really kind of sets you apart is the infrastructure that you have at your airport that is going to be very attractive to people. If you have the facilities to accommodate people, that is another important factor that's going to draw people to your airport. I mean, for the most part, the majority of people, the vast majority of people choose an airport based upon their proximity to home or their office or where they work. But infrastructure and the amenities available at airport do play a significant role in that decision process. One of the things that I think is important is that for the most part, everybody in the region, when it comes to hangar rates, everybody is below the national average. It's a very difficult decision. Nobody wants to be kind of the leader as far as pricing in the aviation industry. But generally what happens is that the first person that takes that risk and raises the rates, everybody follows suit and raises their rates to follow. But it's really difficult for people to kind of be that market leader because aviation is a unique industry from the standpoint of it being the users get a lot of infrastructure that is at no cost to them. As soon as there's a slight increase in the rental rates, they're crying poor, saying we're going to have to sell our airplane. You go up $10 a month, we're going to have to sell our airplane. And 99.9% of the time, that's just not an accurate statement. It's just, but we try to weigh all of those things in. Supply and demand. Supply and demand right now for hangars, just to kind of jump ahead a little bit, the important factor in this whole situation, every airport in this region is looking at building hangars. Georgetown, for example, is looking at the airport doing some, and they've got a number of private developers that are looking to build hangars. What's going to happen is the first one that gets hangars constructed coming out of the gate is going to be the big winner in this, because you've got these people on a waiting list, and as soon as that first project is done, whatever an airport is, they're going to get an influx of people, and then it's going to be kind of a catch-up process. But the first person that is able to get hangars built and available is going to be the big winner in the long run. And once you get them on your airport, It's a lot easier to keep them than to try to attract them over in the first place, especially if you're kind of competing on a level playing field with other airports that have hangars available. So the critical decision is of course, whether to build them yourself. I mean, there's definitely demand. I'll cover a little bit more of this. There's definitely demand for more hangars at your airport as well as most other airports in the area. But the decision is how do you go about accommodating that demand? So one of the issues, I understand that there is someone that has expressed an interest in building hangars, just entering into a ground lease and building hangars independently. And as I explained to Sean and some other people at the airport, my concern about that is it's easy to say that they will do that, they will do, but kind of how does all that factor into what the cost is to the end user? A private developer, their primary focus is going to be getting a return on their investment. Whereas the airport can look at things and the city can look at things on a little bigger scale of what they're doing to promote aviation, promote activity at the airport. Plus, the airport has the significant benefit of being able to generate additional revenues from the sale of fuel, services, and those type of things. So attracting new users to the airport. And in most cases, the municipality can get a better rate or capital than what a private developer can get, especially for an aviation project. So I think that obviously the airport is going to get the benefit of fuel no matter whether they build them or other people build them. But I think one of the things I consult for airports all over the country, and one of the things that I always emphasize to them is that the main thing that you want to do as the airport sponsor is to control your destiny. And the more that you can build on your airport yourself, as opposed to just ground leases and letting somebody else build it, the more you can control, the greater opportunity you have to control your long-term destiny and use the infrastructure you have to attract businesses to the airport, not just users of the airport, but just businesses to the airport area because you've got that airport asset available. So one of the primary things we did in this project was do an airport survey of other airports in the region, what their rates are, get a little better idea of what's going on at the other airports. We surveyed a total of 18 airports. I mentioned earlier there's about 7 that were kind of key, but we broadened out and covered about 18 airports. Basically, every airport that we surveyed, the T hangar occupancy was above 90%, and the vast majority of those 18 were at 100%. Small T hangar rents range from $200 to $540 a month. Medium hangars, $270 to $605. Large T hangars, $300 to $1,500. And the box hangars were $278 to $875. Now, as you can see, there's a wide range in each of those categories. And generally that variance has nothing to do with supply and demand. It has to do with the age and utility of the hangars. Is the size of the aircraft that it can accommodate. Some of these at the lower end of the range, some of them have dirt floors, some of them just have an asphalt floor, a few of them have concrete, some of them all they have is one fluorescent strip in there and manual doors. So it has a lot to do with the amenities that are available. Generally, the higher rates are for newer hangars that offer some of the amenities that I would anticipate that you would be doing if you build hangars at your airport.
Square footage wise, what's large, medium, and small?
It's I would say just in simple terms, the small is under 1,000 square feet. Medium is 1,000 to 1,200, and then large would be 1,200 and above. So it really kind of varies. Each airport, so there's not kind of a standard size, unfortunately. in the industry, we get that question a lot about, kind of what's the standard size? And I bet you out of the 18 airports, there was probably 40 different hangar sizes that, that were out there that kind of fell. And in some cases, the hangars that were in the small category size wise at one airport would be in the medium category at another airport. So our recommendation after going through all of this, we were trying to be conservative about this just from the standpoint of to kind of see what the real demand is. What we were recommending was starting out with a minimum of 2 10-unit T hangar developments out there, so 20 T hangars total. You could certainly do more, but we were trying to approach it from a conservative standpoint, just to kind of see what the demand was. Also, that if you can create demand, if you do 20 units in phase one, and if you lease those up, get them pre-leased up front, you immediately start the next section, and you can start bumping the rents up as you go along, which makes them even more feasible as you go forward. Because that was one of the things that we looked at, is also the opportunity to kind of raise the bar for the existing hangars at the airport. As you start getting the demand, creating demand from new hangars, you're able to raise the bar a little bit at the lower end as well. That generates some additional revenue to help amortize the cost of what you're building. We do kind of recommend the medium size hangars because they do kind of accommodate more of the aircraft that are out there in the fleet today. They're willing to pay a little bit more. This would accommodate like a lot of the larger, the twin engine and some of the larger single engine turboprop aircraft. We're saying to be heated and insulated. Obviously, in this market, maybe you don't need to be heated, but certainly insulated, just to kind of protecting those aircraft on a year-round basis. Electrical outlets, lighting. Important factor is separate electrical metering for each unit, because you don't want people putting in there and plugging in, refrigerators or anything, and they're running them, year-round because you're paying utility bills. And then a restroom unit for each building. At the end of each building, a water spigot for washing aircraft or whatever, and floor drains in each structure. So, plus we're recommending, again, kind of from a conservative standpoint, to kind of see what the real demand is. Box hangars they're a lot more prevalent in the market today, but there's not a lot of them in this particular area right now. But the box hangars is what we're finding that more airports are building now, as opposed to just the nested T hangars. They're building these 50 by 50, 60 by 60, 80 by 80 box hangars. They're individual hangars that can accommodate, multiple aircraft. Or if, somebody just has a single aircraft, but they want space to do whatever, having a little clubhouse, kind of private clubhouse or getaway or whatever. But so we were just recommending 5 of those box hangars to start with, to kind of course, test the demand. If those are, if you find out that the market is just not there for those would transition very well to being utilized by the FBO, either for transient aircraft storage or just leasing them out to on an aircraft footprint basis. So you can put multiple aircraft in there, whether it's short term or long term. So what we from our surveys, what we found was T hangars that for the market rate being somewhere to $600 to $650 per unit per month. For the box hangars, $8 per square foot per year. Annual increases in your rental rates by the CPI or some type of fixed rate, 3%, something of that nature. And then, of course, individual meters for each unit. So in our feasibility, some of our assumptions for the T hangars, average cost of construction, what we found was about $90 per square foot for a 1,600 square foot unit. What those numbers came from the city of Fort Worth. Actually built a number of hangars at Spinks Airport about a year now, probably a year and a half ago, and that was really the basis of those cost numbers. So utilizing the conservative $600 per unit per month, average annual vacancy of 3% annual escalation. Maintenance reserves of $10 per unit per month, and then we did an amortization of that over 20 years and 30 years at a 5% interest rate, 100% amortization. What we found from that was on a 20-year amortization, the net operating income does not exceed debt service until year 17, and then you're going to have a cumulative cash flow during that period about $740,000. So you really don't reach a net profit number until year 23. Similarly, on a 30-year amortization, you exceed debt service in year 10 and you hit a net profit in year 18. What this shows you, we did not do a 40-year, but you can see the trend. If you are willing to amortize that over 40 years, you're going to get a revenue stream exceeding debt service at a much faster rate. There's obviously a risk associated with that, but there's a number of airports that have done 40 years on their amortization just to try to promote activity at the airport and to accommodate the need for hangars. Box hangars, same type of analysis. Construction costs at about $150 a square foot. Same amortization. So with the box hangars, a 20-year amortization, you do not net operating income doesn't exceed debt service till year 15, net profit in year 22, and a 30-year amortization, you hit kind of a gross profit number in year 8 and a net profit in year 14. So with that, the funding options is one of the things that I was asked to look into with some of the funding options that are out there. Unfortunately, there are not a lot of options out there for grant funding for hangars in the airport industry. There's a lot of money that's available for airports, but generally it's associated for infrastructure and not for revenue producing projects. So, and then when there is funding available that you can use, you generally, in order to qualify for that, you have to be able to prove that you basically have all your infrastructure projects covered before you can use those funds on a revenue producing project like a hangar. You're also competing with other airports for those funds in a lot of situations. Every airport in the state of Texas is out there vying for the same pool of funds for both infrastructure projects and projects of this nature. So you're out there competing with all your neighbors for those funds, and then you're going to have to include that project in most cases in your 5-year capital improvement program, which means that sometimes you may have to build it and then hope to get reimbursed somewhere down the line, because you obviously don't want to wait 5 years and to where the other airports are passing you up based upon that supply and demand curve that was out there. So again, we appreciate the opportunity to work with the city again, and I'll be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Thanks, sir. Council, anything?
The rates, and I know you explained some that somebody has to go in to bump them up.
Right.
But I have heard a lot of concerns from airplane people about that's really high.
Right.
Do you, compared to other ones, if you take out Austin and some of the bigger
Right.
cities, where do we fit in there? with that? Where would that 600 fit in?
You would be pretty much right in the middle. I mean, that is the big problem. That's the reason I made the comment earlier about everybody wants a new hangar until they find out what it costs. But the reality is that, you know, it cost in today's, that's what it costs to amortize the cost of building new hangars. And, nobody likes paying more, but, you know, if they want, that's what every airport's gonna have to charge for the new hangars. That's part of the issue. The construction costs aren't gonna vary from airport to airport. The only difference is going to be, you know, how much they allocate, if anything, for the value of the underlying land. And essentially how long they're willing to amortize that cost in order to get the rates down low enough to, to kind of make the numbers work, if you will, for the tenants and users. There's a lot of ways you can go about it. And again, those are market rates just based upon a kind of a traditional scenario where the airport is just being an airport. The airport sponsor is just running the airport. You do have the benefit that you are going to be able to generate some additional revenues because you are the FBO at the airport. So you're providing fuel and your other services that you obviously will be able to offset some of that as well. So that 600 number is based upon just looking at the real estate standing on its own, if you will, and doesn't account for, especially like the return analysis doesn't really provide for the additional revenues from other sources that might be available. So but that 600 number really is kind of in the median of what we found in the survey. And again, I think the reality is, and the way you have to approach it is that's kind of what everybody's gonna have to charge if they want to be able to amortize the cost of new hangars. And the chances are that it's going to be even higher if it's done by a third party developer, because they're not gonna they're gonna be focused on just,
Profit.
getting a return on their investment, and they're not gonna get any secondary economic benefits.
And you mentioned the several economic benefits we get just at the airport. I think that as we have a lot of these bigger corporations come to town, and they're outside of their corporate jets and stuff, they're going to have more people that want planes, want personal private planes. So I think we have the benefit of helping to attract businesses with the airport too, outside of just having the big corporate hangars. But.
Michael, as a follow-on to what he's saying, just assuming we had the hangars in place tomorrow and the FBO, what else do we need?
You need to put out a flyer saying you got hangars available for rent. And
But I mean, other amenities. Are getting around, I mean, are there things that jumped out at you as amenities that we should have or need to think about also?
no, I mean, you've got you obviously just made a tremendous investment in the FBO facility that is going to, be seen as a benefit to anybody coming here, because if they're gonna fly in there, sometimes they're gonna just come taxi out to the FBO or ask the FBO to pull their aircraft out to the FBO. So I mean, you've got that facility that attracts people. You've got a beautiful entrance into the airport. You've got those amenities that are available. I mean, I think there's you have a lot more to offer that a lot of airports in this area do.
Is a boutique hotel essentially in conjunction with the airport something that we need to consider also as time goes on?
I mean, it's difficult to say. That the hotel, in certain situations, it really kind of, you would have to look at kind of what the demand is for hotel space isn't really in the area. So are you going to get people that are willing to pay a little bit more because they're flying at the airport and the hotel's going to be right there because they're flying out the next morning, or what? So I think it's, those are difficult. It's just like the challenge of deciding whether you're going to have a restaurant at the airport.
Sure.
It's it's probably less than a 50-50 chance that an airport restaurant is successful. There are some great ones out there that people fly from all over the country to have what they call the $100 hamburger. But it has taken a lot of airports a long time to find that right operator. And I think this would be the same thing with a hotel. I think if this is like a lot of things that at airports, I say, listen, the worst that can happen, you just put out an RFP and the worst that can happen is that nobody responds. And that kind of tells you what the demand is. I think, if you think that there might be a market for a hotel, I'd say, put out an RFP, let somebody else kind of do the market research for you as to whether there is demand and kind of, go from there. But the hotel industry is very difficult, and you have to really kind of have a market that's there at the airport, I think, to attract people, especially for a general aviation airport.
Have you seen any other airports ask for a non-refundable deposit before you start construction, where we could know really, do we need to build more than 20 right up front?
Absolutely. Even your waiting list now ought to have a non-refundable deposit, and that would be applied to your first month's rent, for example, or your security deposit or whatever. But that's really is not the only way, but that's the best way to find out about what real demand is. I think that's the other thing you do is you can put a non-refundable deposit down to, or certainly when you decide to build them, is that becomes a non-refundable deposit of your first 3 months rent, something of that nature, because you're basically guaranteeing them a space at that point. So once you get to that point where you say, okay, they're in design, we're breaking ground on so and so date, you got to put your deposit down now. That obviously is the way to pay for it. But even on your waiting list now, there ought to be some cost to be on that waiting list, a non-refundable deposit on that. And if somebody comes, if a hangar becomes available, you go to the first person on the list. If they say, well, I'm not ready to move right now, they go to the bottom of the list. Because that's really the only way to really see what that demand is. Otherwise, you get in a situation, well, I'm thinking about getting an airplane. I got on the list 2 years ago because I was thinking about getting an airplane, and they still don't have an airplane, but they're still on that list because it didn't cost them anything to be on there.
Well, so that's a question I have is for us specifically, how long is that list? And then how legitimate are those people on the list?
Yeah, there's 71 people on the list, or there was when we did this study.
That was simple.
71, and Andrew is tasked with going through that list and vetting. It was 80 something, and after he did his last vet, now it's down to 70.
Okay. And you finished, and there's 71 people that
They're confirmed.
and they have a plane?
Yes. Well, I'll say a couple of them don't have a plane.
Yeah.
But yeah, they still live in the area. They're looking at planes.
Yeah.
Well, isn't that awfully, I'm not sure what the word I'm looking for is, but isn't it just to take people off the list because they don't have a plane yet, but they're waiting? I mean, why would you buy a plane if you were 71?
Well, that's
If you're
their
the
excuse.
71st person on a waiting list, where are you gonna put it?
Right.
In your backyard?
Yeah,
I mean,
they don't want to buy one until they have a place to put it.
And you also have to keep in mind that, and Michael said this, but just to say it again. Those 71 people are not necessarily 71, if we have 71 on our list and Waco has
Right.
71 on their list and
And they're all
Georgetown has
Some of the
71.
same people.
It doesn't mean there's there's
No.
that many collectively. And again, there's no skin in the game, if you will, other than telling Andrew, yeah, I'm still interested. I still live in the area. If, you have one available, I still want to be on the list. So it's not really the truest test of if you put 71 hangers on the ground tomorrow, you would get 71 people
Right.
saying yes. And to your point, are they, at what at what price are they willing to say yes to? And when we had our staff meeting with Michael, another thing that we talked about a little bit was, you know, your goal for occupancy, just like in certain other real estate investments, is not necessarily to be at 100%, you know, at all times. You want to find that spot that you're attracting the type of tenant that are willing to pay, you know, you're looking for that sweet spot of not just what's the cheapest so we can get 100% of our hangars filled, but what's going to attract the type of people who are going to be actively flying their planes, using, you know, buying fuel from us, using other services that generate revenue, and not just necessarily, you know, that we have the cheapest hangar. So someone, you know, and again, our goal isn't necessarily 100% occupancy, although that's what we have. It's trying to find that right investment amount to cost to the, you know, to the tenant where it makes sense for everybody.
I guess what I would really object to, without more information or persuasion, is that you've got a list of 10 people on a list. Number one gets called and says, "We're ready for you. You want to come in?" Number one takes it or says, "Thank you, goodbye." Why put number two at the bottom? Why not let number two become number
No,
one?
I'm talking about if you say no.
Oh, okay.
So, I mean, especially if you've got a list of 71 people, and if somebody's first on the list and they, you know, they ought to see that as an opportunity. If they say, well, no, I'm not ready yet, then you go to the next person on the list, and that person doesn't get to
I can check where they are.
to say, okay, well, call, you know, next time you have one available. I'll
Well,
be ready.
how long do we give them if they did not yet own a plane? How long do we give them to go out and buy this mythical plane that now they?
In it with no plane.
And
Oh,
if somebody
yes.
is serious,
Oh, no, I see what you're saying. They could, of course.
They can
they're
check.
gonna know, oh, I'm number 5 on the list. I'm likely to be, you know, up relatively soon. I should get serious about buying a plane if I want to be able to say yes.
How many people already have a plane that's called that?
Yes, we
Yes.
have some that are parked on the ramp that are on the list.
And that's pretty common, is that, you know, a lot of people generally on a hangar list are already tenants of the airport. They're in somebody else's hangar, or they're on tie down or something like that, and they want their own hangar. So a lot of times it's people that are already on the airport.
If we think we may have 40 people right up front or 30 people, maybe we should bid 20 units, then have alternates under the contract and take before we start construction, take the substantial deposits. And if there's 30 of them, we build 310.
Right.
And the price is already there and we're ready to roll, and it should be cheaper to do the third and fourth hangars that way.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. The more you build, the cost is gonna go down on a per unit basis. So I was, one of the things that you said about not wanting 100% occupancy, that's very accurate, because, what we always tell our airport clients is that if you have 100% occupancy, your rates are too low. And so I think that one of the things that I would encourage you to do also, because of that, the variance between what your current rates are and that $600, market number is, you probably need to start inching your existing rates up a little bit to kind of see what I always call the threshold of pain. To see, because also, the more you raise the bottom up, the easier it's going to be to get that, what that market number is. But as long as you got that wide variance, my experience is that everybody wants to point to, well, gosh, what's the difference between, the $600 hanger and the $250 hanger? So I think it makes it easier to justify and to support what you're trying to do by closing that, hypothetical gap, especially as you start, actually getting further into the development process, that you start doing that, because it's going to help you, again, raise the rents across the board, which is going to help really kind of spread that amortization cost out throughout, what you already have as well as the new hangars.
You said at the beginning of your presentation that it's sort of the first community that, sticks its neck out, starts building hangars, ends up usually being the winner. Are we behind anybody right now? Is there anybody that's leading the charge on that?
I think Georgetown is probably the
area?
most aggressive right now, but to my knowledge, they have not gotten anything. There's a few people that are looking, a few third parties that are looking there.
Yeah.
But I don't think, for example, because I've done some work for them with their fuel farm and stuff like that, but they referred me to somebody that was developing about doing an appraisal for them for the land,
Okay.
but I never heard from them. They didn't even call to ask me how much I was going to charge them. So I don't think that they're, far enough along to actually do anything. And I think the airport is kind of sitting back waiting
Yeah.
to see what happens there, because there's a lot of talk, but nobody's actually, pulled the trigger yet. So
So to me, this is a question even for staff. If we're sitting at the starting line, right, and we can self-perform or we can contract it out, which one's faster?
It depends on if there's somebody that's willing to.
But right now, we don't have anybody. Right? Well, we sort of have somebody looking.
You mind going back to the financial slide? So right now,
which one?
this one is fine, yes, or one more, the one you were on, yeah, all right.
One, two more
Yeah,
back.
go back to.
The other way.
Actually, do
I'm
not
sorry,
know
I'm
where
sorry.
you are now, I'm confused. That was, there we go, sorry, so, you still see here that your return on investment is still, you don't get to net profit until year 23, even at the $650 per hangar rent charge. There is no funding in the business plan for construction of T hangars. So to answer your question, we would have to, if we were gonna do it ourselves, we would have to prioritize that, that is something that above other capital needs
Yeah.
that are in the budget, that we want to move that to the front of the line. And then, obviously we could get started with the development. If there's an opportunity for someone who wants to do it, privately, then, we would, if they are, if investor was interested in bearing all of the cost, then that's a very short time frame from, they need to negotiate a ground lease with us, and, that doesn't take long. But the reality of it is that most likely you'll have someone coming, asking for incentives and then that just gets back into how much are we willing to bring to the table, if anything, related to cash or other value for this project, again, over others that, and y'all know this, but the airport is part of the general fund, so it's any capital needs, and we've had a great support from the reinvestment zone. So, a lot of what we've seen developed at the airport over the last several years has been through the support of the reinvestment zone fund, and it hasn't, our capital projects haven't come from the general fund. I don't know that there's, that the zone board sees this as their role. They're more focused on the corporate, investments. So making that assumption that this is a general fund expenditure, not a reinvestment zone expenditure, then you're weighing this investment against
Sure.
streets, public safety investments, the parks, those. And I'm not saying one's better than the other. It's right now there's nothing allocated. So it would have to either be from, moving something around or, somehow, working, increasing revenue, through higher rents or taxes or, whatever the decision point would be there.
I think Chief Randall says you'll give up a fire truck.
I don't think he meant that.
He's gonna come take yours.
Yeah.
I've never, I don't like the thought of not being aggressive as a community, kind of handing the reins over
I
to
don't either.
somebody else. Plus, we messed with a canvas shelter at the end of the airport with no doors on it for a while. Right, right on the road. That was great.
Kathy's holding her head in memory.
Is, of course, when you talk about amortization, 20-year amortization, year 23 breaking even, year 18 breaking even on 30 years. Is there a way to sort of thumbnail, what other revenue would be generated in the, through fuel sales and food without a restaurant? We're talking about hot dogs and popcorn, right? So it wouldn't be a lot. Sorry, Sean. But I mean, I wonder what that would look like. And I know that's a shot in the dark. It's just something that kind of piques my
Yeah,
curiosity.
I mean, I think that it's something we could certainly estimate. I think the only unknown delta there would be how many of the people that would
Right.
occupy this are already on the airport, either
Right.
in somebody else's
Right.
hangar on tie
Yeah.
down. So, because those aren't necessarily new gallons.
And how many of them actually fly a lot, right?
Right. I mean, that's
a big.
so it's hard to, but I mean, there's certainly, we could make some estimates as far as, the typical type of aircraft, and they fly, X number of hours and
Yeah.
then fuel burn. So we could come up with some numbers that way.
That sounds like a complicated process that wouldn't yield necessarily correct results. It would be a guess, an educated guess, but it'd be a guess.
Yeah, and it's something that we often do when doing an analysis like of a corporate hangar
Yeah,
or
sure.
a community hangar where you assume so many aircraft in there and they're flying X number of hours. And so we have done that. It's something we can do here. Let me address one of the things on the timing.
Before you run off,
Yeah,
I'm gonna
yeah,
ask
sorry.
one more question. Whenever it comes to rents, and then we talk about who's flying and who's not, right? So who's buying gas and who's not. Have you ever seen a model where someone would charge X number of dollars per square foot or whatever, but then also charge maybe like a surcharge that if you're not flying and you're not buying fuel here, then we're going to add X number of dollars or X, basically whatever the margin would be based upon the average number of hours flown for that aircraft or something like that. Because otherwise you get some guy parking a plane.
Right.
Right. He's also putting an old pickup in there. And it almost becomes like an expensive storage shed.
Right.
Really like it for a man cave.
Well, that's something you have to be careful about now with the FAA is using those for
Right.
for storing non-aeronautical
Yeah.
items and things like
Pretty good
that.
about enforcing that, Sean.
I-
The FAA.
So the FAA doesn't say anything about how often a person has to fly. It just gives you direction on the use of the facility itself.
Right.
You cannot store a bunch of stuff other than your.
But if your staff sees it, right, they go
Yeah.
by an open hangar.
So,
We are good at enforcing what is stored in the hangar.
Yeah.
What Sean is
Okay.
saying is we don't enforce whether you use your plane or not.
Right. No,
But if
that's-
you don't
and
have a
that's my
plane,
question.
or you've got something other than a plane
Right.
in there, then we do.
Or if you got boxes back on the wings of your plane.
Okay, I think
Do what?
I like your idea about you get a break if you're actually buying.
Well, and that's what I was gonna, there are situations, and you find this with SDOs a lot, where they will say, okay, well, you're gonna pay, $600 a month or whatever. But if you buy X number of gallons of fuel during the course of the year at whatever, negotiated prices, then we'll give you some type of rebate, whether it's on the hangar rent or we'll give you after you buy a certain amount of fuel, we'll give you a discount on the fuel price.
Right.
Instead of $1 a gallon, we'll give you 75 cents a gallon for any gallons beyond a certain amount like that. So
We've used
there are
those
ways to
methods
incentivize that.
you know, if you guys remember the deal with the old AMCOM hangars, we had
Yeah.
fuel usage standards in that deal. So we have done similar, not on the T hangars, but
Yeah.
on similar.
Just something to think about. Because we love to do it. We like to, I say, we, Tim Davis, this has been ongoing. Right? We've had this conversation as long as I've been on council, and it would be nice to be able to take some sort of action that doesn't break the bank.
I agree.
I'm sorry.
We'd be partway through the 23-year amortization had we done it when you started council.
Hey, wait.
When's the best time to plant a tree?
Couple of things I would say. One is, keep in mind is that even if you go a third party developer route, it's gonna take some time because they said we're gonna have to negotiate a lease. They're gonna be looking for some kind of concessions or whatever. And until they know that, they're gonna wait till they have a better idea of that before they go out and get their
Sure.
funding to do
Sure.
that project. Hopefully, they're doing some things concurrently, as far as design and getting a contractor ready to go.
Yeah.
But that's gonna drag on regardless.
Okay.
One of the things though, if you go that route, and I mentioned this in one of the calls that we had several months ago about this, is that one of the things that maybe consider is that if you do that third party development, is that you negotiate something into the agreement that gives the city the right of first refusal to buy those hangars. If they reach a point where they want to sell them or refinance or what, the city has the first right of refusal to buy those.
Yeah.
At the market rate. That allows you again to take control, but accelerate things. So they, even with all those other things, they are going to be able to build them faster than you will be. But having that, and I think that goes with pretty much any hangar, whether it's the T hangars, whatever, on the airport, I would encourage you to have that as an option. So again, it's all about control of the airport, controlling your destiny. So if you have that right of first refusal, if somebody comes in and they want to sell it, that they come to you first and you have the opportunity to evaluate that as far as how it fits into your long-term plans at that point in time.
Great. Agreed. Anything else? Anything else? Any other point you just have to make? I don't want to cut you off.
No. Anybody has any questions later on, just Sean can give you my email address or phone number or whatever. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Very good. Thank you for your time. It was a great presentation.
Thank you.
All right, next item is to discuss the request to consent to the inclusion of a portion of the Temple ETJ in a proposed emergency services district.
Mayor, I did want to go back to the regular agenda items really quickly and ask if council would be interested in a brief update from Justin on, we do have a couple of items on the agenda related to storm recovery, debris removal, and the rental of the solid waste trucks that we talked about last meeting. And I didn't know if you guys wanted a brief update on that. He's prepared for that. I forgot that when you asked us if we had anything on the regular.
Okay, I would appreciate a short update.
Thank you.
On the rental trucks, we rented 7 trucks, 4 of them residential trucks, 3 of them commercial front load trucks
And that's item C on the.
on tonight's agenda. Yes. We've already received the 4 residential trucks. We received the first one June 17th. No, June 26th. So next week we'll already have it a month. The council agenda item is asking for 2 months. So we do have a plan. We're currently caught up on residential collections as far as trash and recycling. We've been staying caught up the last 2 weeks since we received the trucks. And we have a plan to get all of our trucks repaired, PMAs done, maintenance and all of that before the final month of the rentals come in. So hopefully we'll turn the trucks back in before we reach the 2-month threshold.
And 2 more months,
No, ma'am, it's just 2 months.
2 total from the
2
beginning.
total from the beginning. So, but we have
the trucks, our chairs are at Freightliner.
we have 1 at Freightliner. 1, we're actually getting picked up today from Cox Welding. We had a hole in the Packer body. We were leaving trash at the bottom on that one. There was another one, at a third party vendor, I don't remember who, Capital Truck Equipment, I believe. We're getting that one back. We had 2 drive shafts that broke, just some other stuff. But we're currently running 14 trucks right now. That's with the 4 rental trucks. So 10 of our 19 are operational. And we have a plan to get all the other ones going and get those turned back in and off of our docket.
What is the typical number out of that 19 trucks? And when everything's okay, right, and we're delivering services as scheduled, how many trucks can be down out of that 19 to be able to deliver service for? Okay, and we're down 9 right now, not including the rentals.
Correct.
Okay,
So the rentals make up, cover those 4, so we're 5 down in essence.
No, ma'am.
No,
No. Currently, we have 14 working trucks.
okay.
4 is included in the rentals.
Oh, got
So
it.
we have 10 working trucks, 9 down.
but you need 15 trucks to run routes regularly.
Yes, we
Without a
can,
bunch of overtime, et cetera.
we can get by with 13.
Yeah.
And because 2 days a week, recycling's heavy, 2 days a week, garbage is heavy.
Right.
Out of the 4 days that we work. And so we can ship some of that and get it done without getting too far in the weeds.
Right.
But 15 is optimal.
Yeah, it's,
Commercial front load wise, we're caught up. We're still waiting for the 3rd rental truck to show up, but same plan. We have that in place to get all of our trucks back and get those turned in. We might actually turn those in faster than we do the residential trucks. Just based on where we're at with that.
Yeah.
So.
And again, item C is ratifying an agreement that I already signed so that we could get trucks. And that's why there's only a month left on one of the trucks.
One of the
that
the
we
very
got
first,
there, that
yeah.
we got as soon as we could.
Yeah.
So, I don't know if that was a little confusing about the time frame, but it is ratifying, so we're backdating, and we just got the trucks as soon as we could.
And actually, the 2 of the residential trucks we just got last week. So we're just a weekend of those.
you think you'll end up needing to extend for another month? or-
I do not think we have to.
And they turn in our.
Yeah.
Really?
That's the
So
goal.
we're asking you to approve for 2 months for all of the trucks. We'll do our best to, well, obviously, we won't keep them longer than we need them.
Debris collection, just a quick update on that. D&J services are finished in areas 5, 3, and 1, which is here, here, and here. And we're currently working in areas 2, 6, 8, or 4, 8, and 7. And should be complete by next Friday of the second pass, clearing all the tree debris and construction debris and all of that. That's the goal.
And what happens to tree debris after that?
So we still have management sites where we're taking it all. I mean, you're asking for residents.
Yes,
Brush and bulk is still gonna be running routes.
brush,
Our city trucks.
boulder, stumps.
The big stumps are gonna get picked up. So this is a little confusing as
Oh,
well.
sure.
But for stumps removals and stuff that are still in the ground, we're waiting for FEMA approval on that. So we can get reimbursed for that work. That work is not started. We've cut the trees off the stumps. The stumps are still in the ground.
Right.
There's some of that in the right of way
Right.
and there's some of that in the parks. The stumps that are in residents curb, at the curb, they're gonna have to bring special equipment in to pick those stumps up for the parks and the right of ways, and they're gonna do that at the same time. It just makes economic sense to do it all stumps at one time, once we have the approval from FEMA that we're gonna.
Pieces of tree trunks this size likewise. What
Yes.
happens when they're all gone and people are still putting out tree trunks?
We'll
Because
have
I'm gonna be putting out tree
We'll
trunks.
have to deal with that as a city with our brush and bulk.
We
trucks.
will be able to continue to a degree.
To a degree. I mean, the stuff that's, more than 60 inches around, they're out there. I don't know that we can do it as a city.
Yeah.
We'll have to call back D&J probably to come back when that stuff is done or get special equipment to do that.
But you're talking equipment to pull them out of the ground, the stumps off the ground is what
Right.
we're waiting on.
Yeah.
FEMA stuff.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But
We're waiting on, yeah, all fun with the regulations.
Yeah.
but We're waiting on some archaeological clearance.
historical district has,
Okay.
because you're disturbing the
In
ground.
case there's a woolly mammoth under my tree trunk.
You never know which part of that.
Yeah.
Blind spiders, you never know. So it's one of those things that you probably don't want to know. But
Okay,
we're,
an auditor to come look at for blind spiders and all that. Right.
So collection, hopefully next Friday.
yes, we do.
That does not mean D and J's complete with the job. They're still gonna be here managing where we're burning, where we're mulching, all that. There's still gonna be that work done. And then they're gonna have crews still here for stump removals and all that kind of stuff.
And next Friday is tomorrow or a week from
A
tomorrow?
week from tomorrow. A week from tomorrow is the goal. You know, and they're obviously working 7 days a week and still
Sure.
get it.
Right.
But at the peak performance, we had 20 of their trucks here in town, or 22, actually, 22 trucks here in town. Currently, we have 8. You know, Hurricane Beryl came in, a lot of those trucks went to Houston.
Ah.
They left what trucks they thought they could use here to continue to have, those guys still need to eat. For those trucks to be able to stay here and get, you know, a good paycheck. That's what we've allowed. 8 trucks are still here in town. So.
And like so the stumps, we can't remove them from the park without the environmental approval. They can be picked up from the residents' yards, but because it's the same type of equipment, we're just waiting until we get the clearance and then we'll do them all at the same time, if that makes sense.
Well, we will be taking them out of residence yards out of the ground too, or just if they get them out, we're picking.
If they're in the right of way,
Yeah,
if they're in the right of way.
If they're in the right of way, we'll take them out of.
Yes.
only in the
Yeah.
right of way.
Right.
And
Unfortunately.
pick them up if they're removed otherwise. And that's, there is a contract amendment, that's item L on the, consent agenda for DMJ. And then I do anticipate one more, contract amendment on the August 1st agenda, to close out the services that we'll need, from them for storm recovery. And, I mentioned this to staff on, Monday when we chatted about this, but our purchasing team has, done a great job in getting us in a position to be eligible for reimbursement from FEMA. So we do anticipate being reimbursed 75% of the cost that we will have incurred. While it is definitely sometimes counterintuitive and seems frustrating to need to hire the monitoring company, I know we've all kind of joked about that, but the part of those services are also in helping us get the full reimbursement from FEMA. And I think from my understanding from conversations I've had with Tracy, they've actually been incredibly helpful with that. And what can be a very complicated and risky process, we feel very confident and that they have helped us a lot on that. So
Is there reimbursement available for the monitoring company?
yes, if you
Yes.
pay percentage.
Really?
But the portion for helping with, like actual reimbursement supposedly is 100%. So,
That's one of the guys from Tetra Tech, right when they first came into town. I just walked up and I said, listen, are you guys friend or foe? What are you doing here? And he said, absolutely, we are here to be sure that D&J does the job correctly, to be sure that you guys get maximum funding back. And I think that's what's turned out to be the
I
case.
think that's true statement.
Yeah, that's great.
And also just to help support us in filling the paperwork out correctly, making sure we have the archaeological clearances that we have to have and all who would have known? So,
I will say on our brush and bulk, to go back to your point,
Yes.
August 1st, we're gonna try to be back on schedule with our normal brush and bulk schedule. I anticipate we're gonna get, just because the amount of stuff that's still coming out, fences, or, we're gonna be done next Friday with D&J. There's still lots of fences that have not been taken down and put on the curb yet. So I think I ask for patience as we, work through that, and we'll continue to update the website where we're at, like that, how we've been doing. But I think we're gonna get a lot of calls. I anticipate that because we're gonna say we're gonna start back on schedule. I don't know that we're gonna be able to stay on it.
Just, you might want to mention, we're also seeing really, really big delays at the landfill too. We're still
Yeah.
seeing,
Yeah.
It's backed up over the bridge. So that really, really, messes up our turnaround time.
You all have been terrific. D&J has been terrific.
Thank you. There is, at the landfill also, there's, Waste Management has talked about widening the entrance to the landfill. Their engineers are working on adding a third scale, looking at that, and then making a 4-lane road off of Avenue H into the landfill. So we could stack cars up off of H. So we're actually looking at that too, for a solution, but, Waste Management's gonna bring plans back to us and we'll look at that, so.
This is a super general question. I doubt anybody has any, and it just came to me. I know that with the past storms that we've had, of course, a lot of it's brush that could be chipped or, whatever's been done with it. But what impact has all of this, had on the longevity of the landfill?
Of what? Oh, the landfill.
Just,
Well, we're breaking records right now every day. Typically,
and I know the landfill's huge.
Yeah.
Right, it's just been a couple, so it may not have had a serious impact.
No, it is. It's an
got
impact.
Some sort of impact.
it's an impact. I think last year's State of the Union for the landfill was like 28 years left of what we have. And that was at those counts every day, what we're doing. Last year at this time, we were doing 2,500 tons a day in the landfill. Right now, since the storm, we've been doing 3,400 tons a day. So almost 1,000 more tons per day just because of the storm.
Yeah.
So.
Is that counting that extra property that we have that had
Water discussion.
the 27 years or whatever you said?
Yeah, that's what's currently permitted.
The growth.
It is what the life of the land was at.
But we have more land than we have.
We have more land that we're looking at getting permitted and even maybe acquiring more land around to extend the life, but.
Well, with the growing community, to say nothing of the storm, it seems logical to expand it.
And we do have a landfill, and I'm sorry if you just said this.
No.
We do have a landfill master plan.
Yes.
Yeah.
And, proposed, and so we want to get that started very quickly. Thank you, Justin, I
Thank you.
appreciate it. Thank you.
We
for
know
letting
it's
me
been a
put you on the
challenging
spot.
time for you guys. We all acknowledge that. So thank y'all for.
Thank you for the support. We couldn't have done it without the help of everybody coming together.
We like you too, Lord, the fewer emails we get.
I know.
Thanks, guys.
Justin, I just got an email too from,
Speaking of email.
from Hope Cook, thanking.
Oh, yeah, okay, good.
Oh,
So we got it all.
Yes.
Okay, good deal.
wait,
Thank you
is
for doing
that,
that.
is that about Hope's,
Trees?
13th Street.
proposal?
No, 13th
Oh,
Street.
that's different.
Yes,
Okay.
she's got a couple of events coming up, she wanted to basically get.
Yeah.
Thank you. All right, let's see. Thank you.
All right, next item is to discuss a request to consent to the, did I read this one?
I
We
think
just-
you
we
did,
skipped
and
over.
I just
Okay.
wanted to
All right, let
let
me-
Justin and Ralph go back to work. I'm sorry,
Super short term.
we meant to let them give a brief update.
No, that was good, and we appreciate that.
Sorry about
So
that.
now we'll discuss a request to consent to the inclusion of a portion of the Temple's ETJ in a proposed emergency services district.
Thank you, Mayor. So, we have received a request, for the city council to consider consenting, to an emergency services district. So I did want to provide a little bit of background first on what that is. So, an emergency service district, or an ESD, is actually a political subdivision that was established pursuant to Chapter 775 of the Texas Health and Safety Code. The purpose is to support or provide local emergency services, including EMS and fire protection. The district receives, the districts that are approved receive funding through both, or can receive funding both through imposing a sales and use tax and a property tax. They can levy a property tax up to 10 cents. That's the statutory maximum. And they can also levy a sales tax if that's approved by the voters, of anywhere between 1.25% up to 2%, but that is governed by the overall max sales tax of 8.25%. So if there's, for example, in Bell County, the county already charges a certain amount of sales tax, so they wouldn't be able to levy up the 2%. They could only do the gap between what's currently levied by various entities and the maximum 8.25%. In order to create a emergency services district that includes a portion of city limits or a portion of a city's ETJ, the proposers have to submit a written request to the city council, and the city council has to take action on that request before that ESD can be proposed to the voters. The law gives the city council 60 days to provide consent from the date of the request. If the city council does not approve the request, then there is one more option for the proposers to pursue. They would then have to go to a majority of the qualified voters and the owners of at least 50% of the property that are represented within the city limits or the ETJ. And they would have to then petition the city council to either make emergency services available or provide consent. And then the city council has 6 months to do one of those two options. So there's really a two-step process. You can provide consent up front within 60 days. And if you do that, then it goes to an election. If you don't do that, then the petitioners could pursue, could try to go get additional signatures and consent from property owners, and then come back to you for kind of a second process, which again, it doesn't automatically require you to consent to the inclusion, but if you're not willing to provide emergency services to that area, then you basically have a presumed consent.
You have what? A
Presumed consent.
Right.
And how many does it take to ask for the petition? I mean,
Just for this part where they're asking
Just
for
that first
consent, it requires 100 signatures. Again, if you say no to this, then it would require 50% of all of the eligible voters to come back and say, no, we really, really want this. Either provide us EMS, fire and EMS services, or we get consent.
So it's 100, no matter how big the area is.
The process is the people interested have to get 100 signatures, and then they have to go to an election. So everybody in the boundary still gets to vote on that, and of course a majority have to approve it for it to go into to become in existence. But you only have to have 100 signatures to get it on the ballot if council consents to if it's involving ETJ or city limits, which in this case it does, and council consents to it. I feel like that's a lot more confusing than I intended it to be, I'm sorry. So once a city consents to having its territory included in a district, the city cannot later remove the territory unless the city annexes the property. If you do annex the property, then we do have the opportunity to remove territory from the ESD if we intend to provide services to that same area. But if we do remove territory through annexation, we are required to compensate the emergency services district for a proportionate, pro rata share of any outstanding indebtedness of the district. So if there's if you were going to take 1/10 of the area out of the emergency service district, then you would have one, and it's actually based on value, not land mass. So if you're going to take 1/10 of the value out, then you would have to compensate the emergency services district a tenth of their outstanding indebtedness, because they would then no longer be levying the tax on that area to support providing services. They also can require that emergency service district at their option can also require the city to purchase any real or personal property that they say they purchased in order to serve the area that we're de-annexing from the district, and we would have to buy that at the current fair market value if they wanted to convey it to us. Again, sales tax can also be levied. So if we were to annex in area that was included in an ESD, our city sales tax would generally displace the emergency service district tax in the annexed area. However, the sales tax of the amount that the city collects is then offset by the comptroller. So the deducted amount is then paid to the ESD. So while we get it, the comptroller basically gives it back to the ESD. So we did receive a written request on June 6th to provide our consent to an emergency services district. These are the boundaries of the proposed district. So it's the area that's shown there in a colored portion of the screen. And this request is originating from the Troy Volunteer Fire Department. So they are, this is their current service boundary that they are responsible for covering. And so that's what they used as the boundary for their request.
Do we have to consent to the area outside of our ETJ?
We only are responsible for consenting to anything that is in our ETJ or our city limits. Nothing is in our city limits. So the only thing we're dealing with this particular request is what's in our ETJ. This also involves the city of Troy though, because they are also requesting to encompass both their total city limits for Troy, as well as a large, I think maybe all of their ETJ. So they would also have to provide consent for this in order to serve the boundary you see on the screen. And we'll go, I have a slide on this later, but you can consent, this is the totality of their request. You can provide consent to all of it. Again, it's just ours, and if you see the area in green is the part that's our ETJ, so that's the part we would need to consent to. Or you could consent to a portion of it. You don't necessarily have to say yes to all of it.
Like,
Oh, wait, bring,
land map, we only have that one on Range Road. It would be close to that area, right?
Well, there's one that not have us serve them anymore, correct?
Well, we don't serve this area, so the area, right, so the area that's shaded there is outside the city limit. And so it's the responsibility right now of Troy Volunteer Fire Department. So if someone
The
calls
green
911.
the green and the tan.
The green and the tan, and the green is our ETJ, the tan is Troy's ETJ, or just outside of our ETJ. And the white there is Troy's city limit, so that would also be included. So right now, if you called 911 and you lived in that area for fire EMS services, the first responding department that would be dispatched would be Troy Volunteer Fire Department. We do have mutual aid agreement with Troy, so we may also respond depending on the circumstances. But our fire service boundary and our EMS service boundary is only the city limit. So we do not currently provide service outside the city, except for through mutual aid agreements with fire providers that have those areas.
So Troy Volunteer Fire Department is currently serving that, they just want to be able to tax for it.
Yes, that's essentially.
I misunderstood. I thought they were wanting.
I thought that for a while when I looked up.
And then
where
what
the-
you're saying, they want us to step away. Quit taxing that area.
Well, we don't, yeah, I'm sorry.
They want to
We
start
don't-
the tax on the area.
We do not tax outside the city limits. So this this only for us, for our portion of this, it is only ETJ, only extraterritorial jurisdiction. The city of Troy has two things to deal with. They've got their city limits and their extraterritorial jurisdiction. But for us, it is only an ETJ issue. So we do not currently provide any services outside the city limits in the ETJ related to fire and EMS. And we do not generate any revenue from the ETJ. There are no city taxes levied in the ETJ. There is no city sales taxes levied in the ETJ. But the law saying that to create an emergency services district, the law says that the proposer has to get the consent of the city whose boundary or ETJ boundary is included in that. And so and if we don't provide consent and, again, they come back with 50% or more of the property owners saying, no, we really, really want this, then we would either have to submit a proposal saying that, okay, we'll serve you and this is how we'll do it, or give them consent to go try to create this district.
We haven't asked a clarifying question.
Mhm.
Currently, the volunteer fire department, the Troy Volunteer Fire Department would bring this petition, correct?
Well, the petition is made by individuals who live in the area. It is being championed by the Troy Volunteer Fire Department.
That makes sense. But that's, Troy, the city of Troy does not have a fire department.
They do not have a paid fire department.
Right, this is the group that services the city of Troy,
Yes.
and the residents of the city of Troy, are not being levied any sort of tax for this currently. So in their mind, it would appear to them that they are getting fire service for quote unquote free. Is that a fair statement? Or was that convoluted more?
Without knowing and I have briefly spoken with the city manager in Troy about this issue, without intimately knowing their budget. The Troy, the city of Troy, it wouldn't be uncommon, I should say, for the city to pay something to the volunteer fire department. I don't know if that's the case here. But the county does provide funding for volunteer fire departments that provide service within unincorporated areas in the county. But I do think that it would be an accurate statement to say that there's certainly no dedicated tax associated with fire service.
Yep.
And because they are not a department of the city, they are not necessarily directly funded by the city unless they have some type of contract with the city that provides
Right.
funding. I don't know, Chief, if you know anything about their funding.
Yeah, so I think they do get a little bit of a stipend from the city of Temple, city of Troy. And then their biggest part of their budget is from either fundraisers or from the county funds you were talking about. They have a fire response run, which is about $250 a call, and then an EMS, which is around 50 to 75, depending on how many calls there are.
So the reason that they're making this request is because they want to have a revenue source to be able to have some staff, some part-time staff, and purchase some equipment, and even potentially build some stations to respond out of. So that is why they're making this request. So right now, their opportunities for funding are from the county, from anything the city chooses to give them, from any money they raise, but they don't have taxing authority. This would provide them with taxing authority. I hope that's,
I'm sorry. The blue.
I have done a horrible job at this presentation so far. Failing.
Blue, those clubs and up by Moody Road, what are those blue areas?
Those areas have been, if you recall, maybe there's a new law at the last legislative session that allows property owners to petition outside of the ETJ.
Right,
So those areas in blue have done so.
yes.
So they're not really in our ETJs, or they're not really. They are not in our ETJ. So we do not have anything to do with the consent in those areas.
And this would not change that.
They
If we
are,
agreed to this, it would not change that.
yeah, so they are within the proposed emergency services district area. So they would be eligible to vote for
Oh.
the emergency service district and would be levied any taxes that would be levied by the ESD if it's approved. But their inclusion in the election is not dependent on your consent because they're not in our ETJ.
And if we were to, if they are included in the election and they vote against it, but the election passes, they then have to go along with it. They still have to pay. Who's gonna enforce that if that were to come about?
Yeah,
Bill, what?
Who?
any,
Tax, Bill Cat.
they would be
Oh, yeah,
subject.
yeah.
Well, I mean, they would presumably, just like all the other taxing entities in Bell County, have a contract with the Bell County Appraisal District to collect taxes on their behalf. And so if someone didn't pay those taxes, they would be
That's their
subject to
problem.
foreclosure.
Yeah, not our problem, their problem, Bellcat's problem.
It would, yeah,
Be the same thing as if somebody didn't pay their taxes to, that lived in the county.
Right, but it's not it would not become our problem.
No.
Got it.
They get 20,000 from the city each year.
okay, so a fairly nominal amount, 20,000. I think I lost my ability to control this one.
You did. All right, either way.
In many different ways. So, as I mentioned, we received a request on June 6th. We did reach out to the petitioner to ask them if they would meet with us so that staff, so we could understand a little bit more detail about what they were proposing and why, and they graciously agreed to do that. We asked them for information on their what the boundaries were, because in the original request, they hadn't submitted the boundaries, how they were gonna provide, response, emergency response and service, what their proposed management structure was gonna be, what, they were anticipating related to tax rate or any other budgetary, implications, and what their, implementation plan and timeline was looking like. So we had that meeting, I think, a week or two ago. They provided some of these slides, so I just wanted to provide some of the ones that, so you could see them. So these are Troy Volunteer Fire Department slides here. Again, their goal is to be able to employ, if this district is created and they have a dedicated funding source, that would allow them to employ part-time staff, Monday through Friday from 8 to 5, so that they would have firefighters and EMS, technicians available to respond during those times. Their goal is to reduce response times. Again, currently their coverage area is served only by volunteers. And so they've indicated that this can create response times greater than 20 minutes during the day, because those volunteers are typically working other, jobs during that time frame. The management structure, so under the law, the state law, the ESD is actually managed by a board of commissioners that is appointed by the Bell County Commissioners Court. They serve a term of 2 years. The department didn't really provide a lot of information, and I don't think they really have a lot of information yet on, in terms of how they would manage their budget or, other kind of administrative management type structures beyond just that the commissioners court, as required by state law, would appoint their board and they would go from there. Their goal, again, would be to get this on the ballot for November. And then, if it passed, they would, their first order of business, they want to buy a new fire engine and a new tanker. Then the next year, they would want to start evaluating, potentially purchasing land for a couple of stations, and maybe beginning, architectural services. They would hire or their goals would be to hire a part-time fire chief, again, part-time fire crew, establish pay per call for volunteers, put those engines and tankers in service, purchase a new brush truck as well, land for station. You can see there, I won't read all of it, but they anticipate charging or levying the 10 cents. It would ultimately be up to the commission that's appointed by the commissioners court, but this budget is calculated based on going up to the maximum allowed by state law, which would be the 10-cent levy. And without having any sales tax. So their second year, you can see kind of additional what they would anticipate allocating from that budget. And then in year 3, they're anticipating, I guess, calling another election and getting sales tax authority. So that would provide some additional funding. You can see there what they have proposed to spend that money on. So again, this is not binding. We just asked them to give us, kind of a general idea of what they were.
Is that a wreck?
I'm not sure.
A rabbit food truck that burned.
Yeah, I think it was a grain truck or something that burned on the highway. We were there at it, so.
So,
I know, deer food, that's what I saw.
that probably didn't smell too good. So just some considerations that I think we need to think about as we're evaluating this request. The area that is currently under, it's part of the proposal, does include the area that we, if council knows, we've been working diligently on to expand for our North Industrial Park. And we mentioned that to the group that we met with, and understandably, they didn't know that. Again, they just submitted their, the boundaries that they're currently responsible for. They're not looking, I don't think they're not necessarily looking to staff up to a level that would be appropriate for kind of industrial response. So that's probably, from my perspective, the main concern or the main consideration that we need to think about is if we know, an expansion of our city limits and our industrial park is imminent, it probably doesn't make sense to consent to that area being included in an emergency service district only to almost immediately turn around and take it out and potentially have to pay, money
Do you have
to
any
do that.
idea what kind of cost it would be to buy back an area?
It's based on the appraised value. So if the appraised value, if you're buying it while it's still undeveloped, then, it's gonna be less than if you buy it. We certainly wouldn't want to do is allow
Develop it and then.
the manufacturing plant to be established on it and then buy it back, because we would basically be paying for everything then. As is,
Based on the revenue they would lose from the 10 cent.
it would be depending on the debt they levy. So it really depends on how much debt they levy and what portion that we take out is, we would pay the pro rata share based on the value of what we take out to their whole taxable value. And so as long as it stays undeveloped, it probably wouldn't be a super, it wouldn't be millions of dollars, but certainly in my mind, if we know we're already going to be expanding into a certain location, it just makes sense to not include it up front. And in the future, we do, if you do consent, you just do have to keep in mind that in the future, if we continue to grow and we may have some financial implications in the future. And again, whoever is around during that time would just need to remember, take it out before the factory gets built. And then you'll probably be fine.
Can I see that? Is the map just back one or is it?
No, but I can get there. I should have put it in there. So, and I'll stand up real quick to say that certainly, so here's the new outer loop alignment. So certainly this area, right here is the area that we're, actively developing. And so I would certainly recommend that we, I would strongly suggest that we take this out of the boundaries if we're to consent to it.
Possibly back from about 12:30 or
This is
12:37
317.
down to 317.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you, the balance that you have is, how imminently would you likely see that come into city? Because, I think what we would want to avoid is creating an island where someone isn't getting service from the city, but also isn't covered by the district and isn't,
We
and
probably have to cover it now if we take it out of this, because that's gonna take it out of Troy Volunteer Fire Department's service
Mhm.
area, right?
that's, I think that is probably something to be determined. But I do think it provides them challenges to be able to respond outside an area that's not paying. So, I mean, and if you want to direct staff in this way, I probably would suggest a little bit smaller area, the area we absolutely know is on maybe the 5-10 year horizon, and let some of the broader area come in later as we get more,
That area south of Cedar Creek is also developing pretty good.
Yeah, it sure
so
is.
anything is in a 5-ish year window, I think we probably should opt out, and anything broader than that, we just need to think about whether during, before, even if it eventually comes into the city, it may be appropriate to be included in the ESD if it's a longer term situation where it'll stay out of the city for several years.
People are gonna, as far as residential development, well, any kind of development they're gonna have a hard time probably developing without getting our services and want to be in our city.
Certainly with that's a lot of that's Pendleton Water Supply Corporation too, so, which is a related topic.
That makes it a little more complicated.
So we really have 3 options. We can approve the request, or I guess maybe 4. We can approve the request either, again, as submitted, or we can modify the boundary. We can say, we won't give you approval for all of it, but we'll say yes to this portion. You can, take action to deny the request, or if you just take no action and a 60-day lapse, then it is the same thing as having denied it. So we do have, the request again was submitted on June 6th, and Mayor, I forgot this portion when you and I chatted about that this morning. So June 6th is the day we got the written request. So our deadline, our 60-day deadline is August 6th. So the city of Troy only meets the second Monday of the month. They didn't have this on their agenda in July. So presumably if they were going to take any action, they would have, assuming they got the request on the same day we did, then they would have to have a special meeting in order to make the 60 days. The county has to call the election by August 19th. So if we don't consent by that time, then the election can't be called. But what I wasn't considering this morning is we have a 60-day window that ends on August 6th. So our next meeting on August 1st is the last meeting last regular meeting that we could take any action on this and meet the 60-day timeframe. And, I wish we had, and I don't think there was any ill intent or malice, but I wish we had come to the table earlier and talked through this so that we would have had a more time to work out, what makes sense, in terms of who should do what, who should provide service where, and what the boundary should be. And I think that the city of Troy, may have some of the same, it would be nice if the city of Temple, Troy and the two fire departments that serve the area could have had a little bit more time, but this is where we're at. At this point, we have really unfortunately just our next regular meeting to be within the 60 days in order for them to get our consent, if we feel comfortable doing that, to get on the November ballot.
This isn't necessarily going to increase. I mean, it's in the ETJ, so it's not gonna really impact any of our ad valorem tax paying residents.
It does not.
Would we, if the city of Temple moved forward with an approval, would the city of Troy consider that helpful or hurtful? What I'm asking is there a reason why we might want to coordinate? Because to me, it appears to me that the city of Troy is the most impacted.
I would agree with that.
And so here we are making a decision that could negatively impact a neighbor.
They have to agree too,
Thank you.
Hmm?
but they also have to agree.
No, I know, but I wonder if this is something that needs to be coordinated. And you,
Agree or both no.
right, and then maybe the answer is a denial now, but come back next year. Let's take some time to really thoroughly work through this.
Does it have to wait a year?
As far as I know, it can be on either uniform election day,
Oh.
So it could
May
be
or
6 months.
November. I don't know that for
Couple
sure.
months.
I would need to double check that, but if that's true, then the next kind of deadline would be February of 25
To get on May,
to get on the May.
yeah. That doesn't seem
Like
unreasonable
January
to me.
But sometimes some actions are restricted to the November ballot, so it may be just November. That is not something I researched. I'm
Has
sorry.
anybody had a conversation with Bill Schuman? Is he an appropriate person to have a conversation with?
I think.
How much, if we took over some of that area, I know we get paid some if we respond in those outside the city limits areas, correct?
Yes.
But we still don't make up, because you told me the other day, some things we don't get paid for.
Yeah,
It's very little.
No.
Yeah. I think last year was 19 or 20,000
What's that?
for our responses outside the city.
What area do we
Oh.
have to, I thought this would be part of it, but what areas do we have to respond to that?
Respond
are outside
Just
the
anywhere
area?
in the county. That's our responses anywhere in the county, so.
But we're not first
Maybe
responsible, we're not first responders anywhere outside the city limits.
Right.
Well, I bet there are times when,
Okay.
I bet there are times when Temple's first on the scene.
Absolutely.
There are plenty of times.
So
that
then
happens.
we really become the primary agency.
Particularly during the daytime hours.
Yeah.
Which
That makes sense.
is a benefit, why we would want to support this.
Yeah,
In
Well, they can
a
actually
big
have the-
way.
have the facility,
Yep.
the equipment to get there first.
Again, ideal situation would be, we backed up 6 months, we came and had a conversation, we figured out a legal way to, maybe consent to everything and, an agreement of when something comes into the city, it's gonna, automatically come out and they're gonna waive the payment that they're,
Yeah.
So that would, if we could have more time, that would be ideal. We don't have more time, under
But
the
we
current
do.
request.
Yeah, but we do have more.
We can make it happen.
Yeah, we
Yes.
can,
We can make it happen the next time.
Yeah, we,
So I
Yeah.
can't find
Yeah.
the statute yet, but I've seen other elections for ESDs that have occurred in May, so that does.
It's,
if it can occur, in May, I definitely say, we say no, just so we have time to come bring it back.
I still say Bill Schuman is commissioner, including that area. He lives in that area. Ask him to help facilitate meetings. I know he won't stay commissioner, but he's got time to start.
and we do have, I don't think we have any bad relationships with Troy or the Troy Volunteer Fire Department. In fact, I think, I know that some of our full-time, full-time firefighters volunteer, so this is not an adversarial
Yeah.
No, I
relationship.
understand that.
I don't
And
think
again,
there's-
we would be
It's just have
happy,
time to figure it out.
yeah.
I don't think
Yeah.
there's a struggle convening meetings.
No,
either.
I know there's not a struggle. I just think that somebody like Bill should be included.
It's really like Bill might sit on the board of the volunteer fire department later, right? That has to be appointed by the commissions
True.
with him rolling on. My thought is we ask them to wait, to get staff time to get their hands around everything and also to help Troy get their hands around. Cause again, I would hate to be the least impacted group that pushes a vote that says yes and maybe pushes Troy into a corner. Is that,
Especially if we
is that
find
a
out they
fair,
can do the election in May, I mean, wait 6 months.
yeah,
Let's
I mean,
really
is that a
figure
fair
it out.
analysis or am I missing something?
It is fair.
Maybe, unless I'm missing something.
I think that's fair.
And
Chief, are you comfortable with that?
Sure, yes, ma'am.
I don't think you're gonna say no.
no one wants to tell a firefighter no.
That's right.
I bet we have firefighters who live in Troy.
Oh, absolutely.
And
Is it
all
one of
that
ours, the
fire
chief?
Yeah, I mean, the fire chief for Troy is one of my drivers. So, and I think the assistant chief is one of my captains. So, and my assistant chief is actually on their department as well. So,
Do they ever leave duty at the city of Temple to go fight a fire in?
no.
That wouldn't be.
Now, a lot of times we end up there with them,
Can
but no, they don't.
we just take our truck? It's gonna be there anyway.
Yeah, they do, but not in that manner. So,
No, I
through a
agree.
mutual aid request. So,
And again, I'll say that I don't think we want to discourage this type of thing because I
No.
think this is a good
I think it's a
solution
good thing.
for, the fact that there needs to be a funding mechanism for, people who are benefiting from the services who don't pay city taxes. They need to, this is a good solution to get them, the services they need, without it coming from.
Yeah, especially if we're losing money being second responders. We want them to be as equipped as they possibly be.
yeah, and in the end, I mean, making them more capable helps us when we need mutual aid.
Yeah.
So it's, it kind of works both ways for us too. Because they do come mutual aid to us, particularly on any of our grass or brush fires. So,
I think the consensus here is that to give us time to plan, to give Troy time to, and Troy can do what they want to give us time to plan, both around our economic development priorities. I think this group is saying at least wait 6 months.
And Kathy did confirm they can do it in May, so, we'll speak with them about that and try to help coordinate the conversations between the two cities.
Did they just simply have to write a letter or is there a bunch of legal expenses they had to go through to ask for this?
They did hire an attorney. I don't think they have to do any of that over again. They will have to get their signatures again.
About 100.
Yeah, but I don't think there's any cost for the petition or, and I think it would be a very nominal cost to wait 6 months. And again, I think we could also help them, think through things that they just haven't thought about, how they're gonna manage some of these things, because that's just not, that's not what they do, day in and day out. They're all volunteer, so, we're grateful for that and their willingness to do that. So I think we can probably also help them, be better prepared for the, like the implementation if it's approved.
Okay. Very good.
Okay, thank you.
No, to need your permit.
It is, thank
Okay. Item 4 is to receive a presentation.
Or deny, or ask them
take
to
no action.
withdraw. or-
That is
And
actually
then
a
instruct
question.
them. No, I don't, yeah, I
I
think,
feel comfortable just communicating
Yes.
that council's not gonna take action and we'd like to work together.
because not
Or
taking
they-
action is in effect,
Yes, it's a denial, yes.
but without having to vote on it. Okay, next is to receive,
Can we do mine first before you get to my half hour? I just,
this number 5.
Mhm.
I thought you said we weren't gonna do it.
I know, I just want to tell everybody I'm not gonna do it. Everybody has to have done by 30th.
Item 5 is to participate in the cybersecurity training.
So we're not going to do the training in here today. It's 30 minutes. Half of you have already done it, so I didn't see the reason to do it again. But those that haven't, I ask that you do it on your own by August 30th, because we do have to report the results to the state and we have to have 100% participation. Thank you.
Thank you. Please open every email you get.
It's on everything.
This thing-
Everything.
Yes.
And then report everything spam using Google buttons. Yes, report it all.
There might be a crossword puzzle in here.
Thank you.
You bet. All right, item 4 is to receive a presentation on the proposed fiscal year 2025 business plan, including but not limited to an overview of the proposed 2025 annual budget.
Mayor and council, we do have, on our regular agenda tonight, the first, public hearing. So I will reserve, so I know you guys would love to go through everything here, but I'll just reserve for the regular meeting. But I did ask, and would like the opportunity for Tara to give you an overview of the general government compensation study and the findings, because that is something that's included in the proposed budget. So if you would, allow us to do that, she would, like her to go through that.
Here, just before you start, I spent a lot of time with the document you gave us however many weeks ago, 2 weeks ago.
Just one.
And I feel just totally overwhelmed. I'm
Okay.
overwhelmed with other things also, but that has added to it. And then the presentation with the, airport, which is not budgeted for, but we get the sense that there's a sense of urgency perhaps. I just don't know where we are or what to do.
Okay.
In my own mind, I realize that that didn't involve everybody, but I need to get that out.
In relation to the airport specifically, or just?
Well, even before the airport arrived, I was feeling that way since we know that, income is, or money coming in is less than we had potentially hoped for. I'm worried about things that we've got budgeted that are in the budget.
Well, everything that is, we've made the adjustments that we felt were necessary to bring down projections for sales tax and bring up projections for expenditures, again, primarily related to inflationary impacts. So you'll, the main, impact is that, and the benefit, one benefit of planning in a multi-year way is we still have a line of sight onto everything that we talked about doing. And that you're familiar with having been funded. But there are a lot of shifts from, what we
Right.
hope to do maybe in 25 has been moved to 26,
Right.
so, I would, and I can go through that in more detail, right
Well, I'm
now.
gonna drag everybody through it.
And we
I
can
agree
certainly
with
do
you.
that.
Oh,
Um, the,
I only heard half what you said.
the book, from my perspective, the section called, the section under financial plan, which starts, on page 46. There's a few page narrative. It goes from 46 through, 55. So, about 9 pages. And that gives a narrative summary
right.
of everything that's proposed, every major thing that's proposed. I didn't write, if it's a $2,000 copier replacement or something like that,
Right,
but
right,
anything of any significance is in there. And it will have in parentheses the fiscal year that
Right.
it is included. And it will also tell you if it was, where it was before.
Right.
So if it was, and there's, in full transparency, there's almost no accelerations.
Right.
They're almost all decelerated from, and there's a few new things. So that is, that's where I personally look to kind of keep.
Right, I've spent a lot of
Okay.
time with that exact section.
Good, okay.
And
What was those
worse,
pages again?
worse
46
than that, I come away, I mean, I had planned to go through this with you in my one-on-one, which we didn't have. So maybe you and I should I should be quiet at this meeting today and we should sit down with that. I don't know. I'm beginning to question some of our bigger things that think we're undertaking. And then the airport presentation today made me even wonder further. I question where we are with the library. I expressed some of that to Aaron earlier. I question where we are with the expanded change city hall. I certainly question the Arbor of Hope. If you look at the amount of dollars per individual resident, perhaps defray that across that, look at that statistics, if that's one way to look at it, I just don't know. But I'm really flopping around.
Okay. So
can help with that.
taking those individually, the library, and you're talking about the facilities or staffing or both?
The expansion?
Expansion and,
Okay.
yeah, which of course then requires staffing.
So what's proposed in the business plan right now is a $45 million capital improvement program.
Right.
The library improvements are required to be funded through general obligation bonds. So they cannot be funded through certificate of obligation.
Right.
So that is a decision point. Right now, it's a placeholder.
Right.
That is a decision point that we will need to make in terms of, when we would call an election to propose that package.
Well, beyond what you're saying, I've got all that.
Okay.
I wonder if I'm the only person that's flopping around, then let's just stop this conversation and not waste everybody's time. I'm wondering if we need to look at a broader thing and say some of these bigger items that we have been talking about over the past 2 years, let's say, or 3 years, need to be really, really reevaluated.
Oh, in terms of you don't want to do them.
I don't know.
Okay.
And maybe it's just me. Again, I don't want to drag everybody down this rabbit hole.
You know, too, Susan, and I question the same with the Arbor of Hope. I think I like the whole idea of it. I really love the whole idea of it, but when you come down to the money spent, it's kind of quite extraordinary.
It is. But then just take those exact words. I agree 100%. Take those exact words and say cost per resident in the city, and make the same exact comparison to what Michael Hodges just presented today with the library. What would that cost, and with the airport, what would that cost be per individual resident of the city? What is the payback? With the airport, it was 20-year amortization for one of them. And what does that mean per individual resident? What do we get back from it other than a better airport? I don't know. I'm flopping around, like I said.
Brent, I think on the airport too, some of that gets to how much of your cost you want to recover, how fast you want to recover it, and to really take a hard look at the rates too. Kind of a policy decision there.
Yeah, but if we look at the rates, if we need to raise the rates across the board, then
Yes.
all of it.
And when you say rates, you talking about T-hanger rates or what are you
Yeah.
talking about? Okay.
And even fuel rate, I mean, looking at our fuel.
But then, sorry,
No.
yes, absolutely. But then in comparison with both of these things, just again, as examples, I'm not saying I'm against or for, I'm just wondering, what does this mean in terms if we didn't do A, what roads could we do that are more important?
Right.
I know that you and staff have done it, and I certainly respect all of that, completely, totally, but I'm just wondering.
Yeah, well, certainly something like, so all of those things that you mentioned, library, airport, and Arbor of Hope are all general fund expenditures. So if you, those are all debt items, so technically, but supported by property taxes, right? So if you chose to not do those, then you could allocate the funding that's been set to those to other projects that are also, general fund, type projects, so streets, public safety. Or you could, you wouldn't have the tax rate, impact there. So, yeah, that's certainly something that you could do if that's what you felt like was the right thing to do, for sure.
It wouldn't be inappropriate to later call, just have a special call council meeting to really dig into like in a workshop type atmosphere, right? Exactly what you're talking about doing, but when all of us have time for prepared questions, including your team vectors out more, and then maybe give staff time to think more how they don't want to present some of those things. I think this is a hard way, difficult arena to do this in.
Sure.
Because you've got questions that are obviously top of mind, and staff will need to take some time to plan for those. And so.
But I don't want to drag everybody into this if nobody else is.
I think it's important.
No,
to
all of
bring up
that,
this.
all of that is all of our responsibility. Absolutely. So.
Yes, but I'm very happy to go along and support if everybody else is,
No, that's not your job.
well,
I mean,
in some ways,
and I don't mean to
in the
be,
budget, it might be.
well, no, I don't mean to be and please don't take that in a disrespectful way.
To
But
me,
your job is to turn over,
Be okay.
your job is to turn over the rocks and answer questions. So that's absolutely,
I just
our
guess
job.
for me, I don't know that we've done enough comparisons of project A, project B, project C. I don't know.
I think we have a,
Are there projects that you feel like are not addressed that need to be addressed?
Well, I never would have thought of I didn't understand the airport until an hour ago.
Okay.
I guess, I think that his report was excellent, and I guess that's something we really, really need to address if we want the airport to be very successful, and doing what his suggestions or potential suggestions are. Does that make the airport really more successful, or is it successful now? I just don't know. Clearly, City Hall, something has got to be done for staffing space. I understand that completely. I certainly, on a personal level, would like to see all the enhancements in the library.
And, okay, so, and you don't have to answer me right now,
No.
but I think what would be helpful is if I could understand. So and let me think about. Is the concern that we want to reduce the overall expenditures, or we just want, and it could be both of these things at the same time, but is it you don't want to spend as much as being proposed, or you're comfortable with what's being the level of spending, you're just not sure it's being proposed on the right thing? And if it's the latter, then are there things you could point us to that you feel like aren't being addressed, so we could be prepared for that?
No, I don't have anything to tell you that I believe is not being addressed, but as I just said, the airport was new.
The airport, okay.
But
I've had, because I'm the liaison, I've had the airport concern. So I have that too.
well, I'm gonna just say something because it's politically unwise and unpopular in this meeting, but here we are, and I'm gonna say it. I am really, really questioning the money spent on the Arbor of Hope, potential to be spent on the Arbor of Hope per city resident return for the number of people that are going to be housed there. And I look across the country. I've been involved in social work for 40 years since I got out of social work school. I look across the country, and poverty and how homelessness has just increased with all the good works that have been done. Is this the right, is just doing another good work the right thing to do? I don't have any idea. I have no answer, but I'm concerned.
What else is on your mind?
I guess that's about it. Before I start crying, let's move on to the next thing.
I mean, I do have questions on that and City Hall too, that's. We maybe make it cut a little bit and do some other things that maybe need.
That are gonna bring in perhaps more tax revenue, i.e. businesses. It's certainly not.
Among other things, yes.
Yes, among other things, yes, and service existing residents. Roads and things that they need, drainage, I mean, drainage is clearly, and your drainage memo was very good, and I think that's a very good idea.
Drainage is a separate fund.
Yes, but it's a growing issue, and then we have to justify to residents of the city just how we're spending this money when X, Y, Z is occurring, just like we try to justify the two statues at the interstate.
I understand. I do
You
understand.
know, I know you
Yeah.
understand.
I just wanted to make the note that everything else we've talked about so far has been general
Yeah,
fund. I just
yeah,
wanted to
exactly.
make that note that was it, but I know that.
That picture in the paper, that those two statues have generated a recurrence of feelings. I personally love the statues, but I'm probably on an island on top of one of the statues.
And it's hard to, people don't understand when you try to tell them that wasn't, that was.
And they don't care. Some taxpayer may pay for it. Some taxpayer from somewhere paid for it. They don't care where. Just why aren't we doing A if we did B?
Yeah, and the reinvestment zone is more complicated because
Totally.
there is more. Drainage fund can only be spent
Right.
on drainage projects, but reinvestment zone can be spent on a variety of projects. So you could have built a road.
And they don't, exactly. God forbid that we tell them that. You know, you put that statue there when you could have built a road.
All right, let's move on.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Ms. Raymore?
Sorry,
Oh,
Tara.
no worries.
Many
Okay, so,
worries.
so we conducted the general government market study, also known as a compensation study this year. I have pictures of runners on the front slide, and the reason is because over the most recent years, it's a competition. We're racing against everybody else in the municipal government sector that's in our market for talent. These are our market peers, the cities you see listed here. They're the same ones that are used for the civil service market study. So the same 8 cities are compared. And every time we do an update or a change to those cities, we also update it for general government. So we're consistent. The apples just is signifying that we try to get as close as apples to apples comparisons as we can when we're going out. So this is a list of our process. There's a lot of steps involved, but essentially we start off with a big kickoff meeting generally around the beginning of the fiscal year in October, where we meet with the city manager's office and finance, and we talk about what we want to look at in the market study, anything we need to focus on for this upcoming study, and what the process will be. We then have departmental meetings with each of the departments. We talk to them about how we're going to do the market study, what we're going to look at. We asked them to do some homework. This year, we created a website for them to submit their job descriptions and the information that we would use as part of the market study. We get documents from all of our peer cities. Those documents include their pay charts, some policies, job descriptions, if they're doing any type of ad pays. We get retirement information. We ask them for a lot of information to help us to compare with. We then manually match all of our positions. We take our list of positions, we find what the comparable is in each city, and we match those positions for the current pay and what their minimum pay is to get an idea of how we compare. We also look at all those extra things like the retirement plan, any recruitment incentives, what is their paid time off, what are they doing different, just so we can see again, are we competitive? We have follow-up meetings throughout the process with departments if we need additional information.
Our departments,
Yes, our internal. We also follow up with the outside cities too, because a lot of times they'll send us data and something's missing, or we have a question about a specific position. So we have really good relationships with our market peers, and sometimes we'll go in person, sometimes it's by email or phone, but we have a lot of communication throughout the process. We then present our final findings to the city manager's office and finance and city council. And then we'll eventually get back with each department. We'll go over all the data with them. So it's a very transparent and very in-depth process, I would say. So one of the first things we look at is we look at our pay chart analysis and how does that compare. We have 33 pay grades. We have 344 job titles at the moment. And our range, that means the minimum of our pay grades up to what the maximum pay is for every position. There's a 55% range. The current percentage between our pay grades from one grade to the next, if you look at those minimums, there's a 5% difference. In the market, the average range is 49%. That means if someone starts working there at the minimum, when they get to the top, that's 49. Ours is 55. So we're doing a little better than market there. The average in the market between grades is the same as ours at 5%. Average number of job titles is a little lower than ours, 323, but we do have some career ladders and tiers where some positions have more than one step. So that accounts for some of ours being extra. And then again, some of the other cities, or the average of the other cities, is 37 pay grades, and we're at 33. So we're pretty consistent, not far off.
is that partially the different number of grades is because of city sizes?
It could be the city sizes and number of positions they have. They may need more grades because they have more titles than we have. They could segregate out positions more than we do. Like their admin assistants, they might have 5 levels of them and we have 3 levels of them. So that could be.
Would that partially though, because they're larger?
It could be a larger city, or it could even be a smaller city. Sometimes they have more pay grades, and that's just because of how they separate out their specific positions. So we looked at the pay equity. That's one of the most important factors. And we look at the market median. What is the actual pay position compared to position across our market? When we looked at that, we're approximately 7% behind market, rounded, actually 6.67, meaning that our actual pay is about that percent behind. So that's on average.
Wait, say that again. I'm sorry.
So
We're behind 6.7%. Okay, that's right.
We're behind market.
Yes,
so if I looked at a
I get
utility
it.
worker
Yes.
compared to one in the market,
Yes.
and we're behind on average on all of our positions. So for that. One of the things we found, and we mentioned this last year too, because again, it's become very competitive in the last few years, even more so than I can even think of in my career. It's been very competitive in the market for getting talent, retaining talent. They're hiring in now in municipal government, which is not historically the practice. They would always hire everyone at the minimum. If you think back years and you call other cities, somebody leaves, they hire the new person at the minimum. That changed a few years ago. They're now hiring people in at what the last person left at, even when the last person might have been higher on the pay scale. So you're finding that being more common, and most of them are hiring closer to midpoint. So that's where a lot of our market is at nowadays. So that's creating some of that pay equity. You know, again, we're all competing for the same talent in our area. So some of the additional things we reviewed are recruitment incentives. There's only one city that's doing like a general formalized recruitment incentive, and that's College Station. They're offering $1,000 for specific positions. And what that incentive is the people they're hiring, the candidates coming in, they're saying, we'll give you $1,000, and they have some specific positions, and they kind of change it up depending on what they're having a hard time filling. We did institute a seasonal recruitment incentive last year for the lifeguard type positions because those are always hard to fill. And that's been a very successful program. So ad pays, we have 4 ad pays. Back in our last market study, we had a lot of different certification pays and such in general government. We rolled those into the actual salaries, and now there's only 4 that remain. And the reason is because those can fluctuate based on the need of the position. One is a tool allowance. That's in our police department. We have standby pay. That's when someone's on call, they receive that amount per day. So we're at $15 a day is what we do for that. We have bilingual pay. We have a level 1, which is if someone speaks bilingual, they get the level 1 pay. And if they speak and read and write for the purposes of their job needs, then they get the level 2. We also have a shift differential. Compared to the market, we're at or above the market in this area, with the exception of our shift differential, which is a little behind the market with what we pay for that. It's a limited number of positions in the city that actually receive that type of ad pay.
What's the frequency of the additional pay? Am I missing on that?
All of these are the monthly pays.
Okay. Someone that's a bilingual 2 makes $100 more per month.
If they're bilingual 2, they get $100. And I misspoke about the standby pay is actually per day, but the rest of these are all monthly.
Okay.
And most of them, like the $100 would be paid like you get $50 a pay period.
Sure.
Yeah.
For 24 pay periods.
Correct. So they would get it in their biweekly paycheck, but when we're doing it for purposes of our comp plan, they're just listed as the monthly amounts.
Well, you did say something on the standby pay about it being a daily. rate.
Yes, that's
And I thought an
$15
extra $100
a
a
day.
day for bilingual pay too is not bad.
Well, if it was per day, that would be.
I know.
I don't understand. Me too.
In retirement, this is all TMRS. Most of the cities are pretty much the same. The only thing you see a lot of variance in is down at the employer required contribution, which is this very bottom line. That tells you how much the employer's required, and we don't set that number. TMRS tells us how much we have to put in. So that's the one that varies the most. But in our market, all cities are doing 2 to 1. They're all doing the 5-year vesting, and they all have 20 years requirement for retirement. The COLA, that's the amount that's built in for the retirees that they receive each year as an increase if there is a cost of living increase, and we are at 70. But if you look across, some of the cities don't have their set as a standard ongoing, and they'll make a decision every year. So like Waco and Killeen show 0. Doesn't mean they don't ever give anything. It's just not a standing number.
They typically, it's ad hoc, and it's the way the actuarial valuation accounts for it. You know, there's Waco and Colleen's both their contribution rate required percentages down. So it kind of distorts that percentage when they're just doing the ad hoc, but they're still doing it every year.
Okay.
Yeah, they kind of look at the CPI and everything, and then they say, well, we're going to give a 50% this year, and maybe next year it's 30, or so they do that every year.
That's what Tracy was just saying. That's kind of misleading because a lot of those cities, they still give a COLA, but they just do it on an annual basis. So it kind of tricks the system, and
It does.
not that fair, but, Colleen,
Waco,
Yeah.
College Station.
Okay, so we looked at longevity and, what is everyone doing? There are, before we give our longevity starting at 5 years, there's 6 cities out of the 8 that actually give it starting at 1 year. Most of them are at 1 year where they started. So we were a little different in the market there. When you get to the 10-year mark here, we are above the market average, but before the 10-year mark, so the years 5 through 9 listed there, we're a little behind the market on what's being paid, and that is the amount paid per pay period. And it's not really paid to the employees, it's set aside in an account for longevity, and then at the end of the year, those payments are processed for longevity checks. Everyone in our market out of the 8 cities, they all give longevity. We wanted to check that too. Is that still a common thing?
They give longevity for the person who's been employed for that time period, but we don't recognize, as I mentioned to you, Bren, that employee who has talked to me very unhappy about people coming in and being hired higher. with less longevity.
Well, and
I mean, I
looking
realize,
at that particular instance, nobody was paid more than him.
he's just a complainer.
And he gets, well, no, I'm not saying that.
Yeah.
But it is not true that a less tenured employee was hired after him and is paying more than him.
Okay,
That's not
good.
true.
Oh, good. I hadn't gotten that. Thanks.
And in
Okay.
fact, he gets paid more because you add the longevity in, and the new employee who already gets paid less base pay also doesn't get the benefit of the longevity.
Okay, good. Thank you. That clarifies that. Thank you.
So we looked at vacation time. Again, here, if you look up here, you'll see Temple, our employees between the years 4 and 9 earn 4 hours per pay period. And it shows you on the right what the market is. Slightly behind market on those years 4 through 9. The other years we were consistent when we got there. For sick leave, the city and the market average is 12 days a year approximately that employees earn for sick. So we were right at market there. Holidays, we provide 14, the market average is 12, so we give a couple of extra holidays. Floating holidays, the city and the market are both have 1. That's what the average is that everybody gets as a floating holiday. So we're right on market there. So all of those things I just said, I just like to add a caveat at the end is we're very competitive, I feel. We're still very competitive, even though we're slightly behind in some areas, we're above in other areas. So we are very competitive in the market as far as benefits and extra things. Our next steps are we will meet with departments to start reviewing the findings. That generally happens when we know like how what's going to be proposed, what's in the final approvals. And so then after that happens, we would implement, of course, any of the pay changes that happen, and we'll notify employees that we generally send them a letter that says this is what your pay is today, this is what it will be, and everything that will be our next steps. So I'm happy to answer any questions about the study or any information presented.
That's very good.
Thank you.
Very, very clear.
Council, anything? It's nice to hear that we're competitive. But for lots of years, that wasn't the case.
So we're competitive, or we're behind in salaries, but competitive otherwise.
Yeah. Okay, very good. Thank you. All right. Next item. Next item is to, actually, we'll move into executive session now. And it is 5 minutes until 4. And the next item is to receive and discuss a briefing regarding certain economic development prospects and potential real property acquisitions pursuant to Texas Government Code Section 551.072 and 087. Council may meet in closed session to discuss the deliberate the purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real property if deliberation in an open meeting would have a detrimental effect on the position of a governmental body in negotiations with a third person. Discuss or deliberate commercial or financial information received from a business prospect that the governmental body seeks to have locate, stay, or expand in or near the city, and with which the governmental body is conducting economic development negotiations, or to deliberate the offer of a financial or incentive to such a business prospect. No final action.